What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be about, well, the X-Men once again, but the road to Onslaught. And let me explain, because a while back we had created a full story video called Road to Onslaught Part 1, where you had the X-Men dealing with Gene Nation. Well, that was only one storyline for our heroes. You see, they had other things going on for them as well, like, for example, Sabertooth. When it came to Sabertooth, Charles Xavier believed that he had the ability to fix the mind of Sabertooth, to turn him into a better person. Now, we already know that was not going to work at all. And so when it came to Marvel Comics, they kind of gave us a few stories to wrap up that whole plot line when it came to Sabertooth, but how it affected the other X titles when it came to them trying to finish up that major storyline. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to create a full story video, taking all those videos and combine them together into one big video. And so here is X-Men Road to Onslaught Part 2. You know, I have been reading comics for a long time, and I will admit, there are some stories out there I do technically miss because, you know, growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, collecting was a tad bit difficult. It got easier over the years, but, you know, there's still some stories out there that I had completely forgotten about or just completely missed. And this one is one of those stories where I had just completely missed. And that would be X-Men issue number 46 and issue number 47. A two-part story arc where we are being introduced to the X-Babies. And really, with the cover of the first issue, you would believe like, okay, we're going to see our heroes basically turn into babies, right? No. Instead, it's a whole different kind of an idea. But getting into the opening pages of the storyline, we really pick up with Gambit and Bishop. Now, these two characters, they're going out for the night. Now, for Gambit, it's really more the idea that the dude needs a break because he has gone through a lot in a very short period of time. You know, you had Rogue being able to go into his mind after kissing him, and she saw his dark secrets. And so she left the X-Men, left him behind, but also he was somewhat injured as well. So for Gambit, he has gone through a lot in a very short period of time. Now for Bishop, it's really more of the idea the dude is out of time. You know, with them not really being able to go back home, he kind of needs a break from the X-Men to kind of live a little. And so you have Gambit and Bishop go to a club where apparently Gambit is well known of, but also kind of like the guys there, security team, they want to make sure they keep their eyes on him because Gambit is a thief. But now we have to transition over to Jean Grey. Now, for Jean Grey, it's really more of her just being out trying to buy a gift for her niece and nephew. Now, while trying to do that, we see that Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, is with her. The reason why Scott's not there because Scott hates the idea of shopping. But for Bobby, it's really more of like, yes, he's there to help out, but he also has a problem going on for himself. And he believes that Jean Grey can most likely help him with this certain problem with her abilities. Now, while you have the two characters talking to one another, we see that they're being watched by other people. But the problem is we have no idea who they are, but they know Jean Grey and Iceman very well. But somewhere in the middle of America, we do pick up with Senator Kelly. Now, for Senator Kelly, he's with a team right now as they try to investigate what happened at this facility. And what I mean by the statement is that the entire team that was working there had just disappeared, and no one knows where they are at the moment. Now, for Kelly, he does walk over to a bunch of computer screens, and when he does, they all say the same thing over and over and over again, and that would be Onslaught. So yes, we are now continuing to build up to the next big crossover we're going to cover soon on the channel. Now, as we jump back over to Bishop and also Gambit, we have to get reminded that when it comes to Gambit, Bishop did not trust the guy at all. And here's the reason why. Because in Bishop's timeline, it was well known that the X-Men were betrayed by one of their own. And the one person who has survived in Bishop's timeline to witness all of that was Gambit. Now, technically, all we knew was his last name, and that is it. But come on now, it has to be Gambit. And so for Bishop, he's kind of like, you're known in the future as the person who had witnessed the X-Men being betrayed. But at the same time for Bishop, he still believes that it was Gambit who was the one who had betrayed the X-Men. Now, for Gambit, he does try his best to make a case here that he's not that person, that technically he cared for the X-Men too much to actually betray them. But for Bishop, it's kind of hard to believe in that. Now, while you have those two characters talking to one another, we do learn that there is commotion happening in the club between a few people. And the reason why, because you have each person blaming somebody else for touching them behind their backs or underneath the tables, doing different things they don't like to be done to one another, except both parties are technically innocent. That in reality, you have a third party causing all these commotions in the club, and that would be the X-Babies. Now, this is not really their first appearance ever in Marvel Comics. They had actually appeared in the earlier storyline, X-Men Annual, I want to say issue number 12, because the first time we had the X-Babies, it was our heroes who were turned into X-Babies. But this time, they are really a group of characters from the Mojoverse. And for Gambit and also Bishop, they're not going to be the only ones dealing with the X-Babies. That matter of fact, so will Jean Grey and Iceman. Because with those two characters, you have Iceman being able to ask Jean Grey for help. And we kind of find out that he wants Jean Grey to use her abilities to read his mind, to kind of see if there is any traces of Emma Frost still left inside of him. And let me explain, because in an earlier storyline that we had covered, you had Emma Frost in the body of Bobby Drake. And when she did that, she kind of discovered how powerful Bobby Drake truly is. And that right there is a major problem, because for Bobby, he never knew how powerful he truly was. It was kind of embarrassing for him that for Emma to be the one to discover his true potential. But also he wants to make sure that she is officially out of his body. But while you have Jean Grey try to do that for him, well, more X-Babies do appear. That will be Storm and also Iceman in the form of young children. But then out of nowhere, you have Marvel trying their best to build up to the idea of the return of Magneto. And here's the reason why. Because out of nowhere, we jump in the middle of this random town, this random area, and we see Magneto with a random woman, where for Magneto, he does not remember anything at all about himself or anything about his past. And so he's kind of like just out there with a clean slate of mind to figure out who he truly is. But let's go ahead and kind of explain who the X-Babies are, because just in case we have anybody trying to get in the comics, they don't know the whole idea of the X-Babies. When it came to the X-Men, once they were able to leave the Mojoverse once again, for Mojo, he hated the idea that he lost his big entertainment for his dimension. And so what he did was he created different versions of the X-Men to kind of use those versions to keep entertainment going in his dimension. So for example, there was a gender swap version of the X-Men in the 80s. There was also an animal version of the X-Men as well. And of course, you had the X-Babies. Now for Mojo, he believed that technically the X-Babies were not worth anything at all, and he wanted to kill them. But by this point, Mojo is no longer around. Instead, you now have Longshot and also Dazzler in charge of the Mojoverse. But here's the thing, because there are still two characters who went out there to hopefully get rid of the X-Babies. And guys, I am going to mispronounce their names so badly, because I feel like it's Gog and also Magog, but I could be wrong. But they are a father and son combo who are coming after the X-Babies to make sure that they are officially killed off. Now, as we dive into X-Men issue number 47, it's really more of us now seeing the X-Babies on the run. Like, they're trying their best to just get away from the two characters who had followed them from the Mojoverse. Now, while trying to get away, they do run into random people kind of wondering like, hey, why are these children in the middle of the city by themselves trying to run away? Like, who is possibly chasing after them? But before you have the X-Babies being able to fully explain what's going on, Gog and Ngog appear once again to hopefully kill off the X-Babies. Now for Bishop and also Gambit, those two characters got their butt kicked between the two chapters, and so we see them right now trying to get back up after getting their butts handed to them by Gog and Ngog. Now for Bishop, he wants to chase after them, but for Gambit, he wants to finish their conversation from earlier because, again, he wants to establish that even though in Bishop's future, he is known as the Witness, and even though Bishop does believe that down the road that Gambit will betray the X-Men, for Gambit, he's saying, I want you to know right here and now, there's no way I will betray the X-Men. And the reason why, because I care for them way too much to do that to them. Now for Bishop, he heard what Gambit said, but in his mind, he's kind of like, yeah, you can say whatever you want to say, but right now, I still believe the complete opposite. Now, for Bishop and also Jean Grey, they technically did not deal with the X-Babies the last time they appeared in X-Men comics. And so for Jean Grey and also Bobby, they can't believe what they're currently seeing. But Jean Grey read the minds of Storm and Iceman, the X-Babies, and kind of realized that they're technically real beings that were created in the Mojoverse. But either way, you do now have Jean Grey and Bobby trying to play as babysitters. But as you jump back over to Bishop and Gambit, you still have those two characters trying their best to fight against Gog and Ngog. Now, technically, they're getting their butts handed to them. But luckily for our heroes, not really luckily, because even though the X-Babies are there, you still have Gog and Ngog just kicking their butt left and right. But you do have Jean Grey and Iceman appear as well. But like I said earlier, Gog and Ngog is just too powerful, so even with Jean Grey, Iceman, Bishop, Gambit, and the X-Babies, these two characters are just way too powerful. And so it does seem like that one, Bishop, is gonna die, but also the X-Babies are gonna die here as well. Like no one nearby can officially stop these two characters. Until you have Dazzler appear. Now remember, the last time we saw Dazzler, she was with Longshot, and that was back in Jim Lee days on the X-Men, issue number 10 and issue number 11, I want to say. Now, when it came to Longshot and Dazzler, they begun the process of trying to free the Mojoverse, because with Mojo no longer being around, it kind of left the door open for those two characters to achieve something in that dimension. And so right now, with a whole political change happening, as soon as she appears, Gog and Ngog, they begin to kneel down and praise her as their queen, because technically she is now the new ruler of that reality, with Longshot really trying to accomplish the whole goal of becoming the ruler of that reality. But either way, you do have Dazzler say, listen, these kids are under my protection. And so with her being there, the X-Babies' lives are saved. Now here's the thing, because the last time we saw Dazzler, she was pregnant. And so you have Jean Grey kind of stop Bobby from asking her about her child. Now, this storyline will not be explored until many years later in X-Men comics, because, well, you did have a lot of change happen over the years where some writers were not really able to kind of pick up where her storyline had left off at. But either way, you do have Dazzler, Gog, and Ngog, and the X-Babies go back over to the Mojoverse. But the very last page of this book kind of leads into a bigger storyline we're going to cover down the road. The whole idea of the return of Sabertooth, in a way, possibly, because you do have Boom Boom and Charles Xavier meeting up with one another. Now, when they do, it's really more Charles saying he had decided on what to do with Sabertooth. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Uncanny X-Men, and we're going to pick up with issue number 327 and issue number 328. Now, if you saw my last X-Men video we did, X-Men number 46 and 47, we had covered a storyline where it was the X-Men dealing with the X-Babies. Now, in that storyline, we had also learned of the possibility of the return of Magneto. Now, guys, we already know that's not technically the case, but for the sake of the video, let us just believe that it's the possibility of Magneto coming back into the picture. You see, when it came to Charles Xavier, he was very upset with Magneto back in Fatal Attractions. And so in that storyline, you had Charles Xavier shut down the mind of Magneto. And so ever since then, you kind of had Magneto be watched over by different characters. One of those characters was Colossus. But when it came to the end of Avalon, you had Colossus and Magneto crash back onto the Earth. Now, for Colossus, he was technically pulled away into a different storyline dealing with Gene Nation. And so we were kind of left to wonder, what happened to Magneto? And so in our last video, we saw this guy who resembled Magneto, and apparently he was somewhere in the middle of, well, who knows? And so we're kind of like, okay, it's Magneto coming back into the picture, but also he does not remember anything from his past at all. And so as we dive into the opening pages for Uncanny X-Men issue number 327, we really do pick up with Magneto being confronted by a group of children. Now, at first, they believed that he was dead. But once he does get up, they kind of realize like, nah, the dude is alive and well. Well, maybe not well, but then he's confronted by a random woman. Now, her goal right now is to protect the children. And so she pulls out a shotgun and points it right at him. Now, for Magneto, somebody who does not truly remember anything from his past, he does activate his powers. And when he does, he's able to remove the shotgun out of her hands, not out of her hands. Really, he said, you know what, get that gun out of my face, and kind of pushes her back because she's holding the shotgun. But either way, once he does use his abilities, right after that, he does pass out. Now, once he does wake up, he's then confronted by the same woman we saw earlier, and we do learn that her name is Sister Maria. Now, for Sister Maria, she is like, the person in charge of this orphanage, and so that is why she was so protective over the children earlier when it came to Magneto, being right in front of their face, but not knowing who he was. Now, she also kind of asked him like, hey, listen, before you came here, where were you going? Now, for Magneto, somebody who does not truly remember who he is or where he was going, he tells her the honest truth. And the thing is, she believes him. And she's kind of like, okay, cool. Guess what? You can stay here then until you know when you want to leave, or you get the idea of who you are and where you were trying to go to. And so as some time passes by, you then have the kids begin to call him Joseph. Now, this leads into a whole new concept that we're going to cover very soon on the channel when it comes to our coverage over the next few X-Men events. But when it comes to Joseph, he's trying his best to help out around the orphanage. Now, we do learn here that this territory is being battled over right now between two different government parties. And so, unfortunately for this orphanage, every once in a while you might have a bullet or two just fly through the building. And for Joseph, he does get very upset by that because one of those bullets could hit a child in this orphanage. Now, as more time passes by, it's also Joseph being able to build a bond with Maria as well, because Joseph kind of feeling like that he did some horrible things in the past. Now, if we are left to believe that this is Magneto, then technically, yes, he's correct. But again, he can't fully remember what he did in the past. Now, for Sister Maria, she tells him, that's in the past. It's now time for you to work for the future. Now, here's the thing, because with him being there for so long, it's not just him building that bond with the children at the orphanage, it's also him building that bond with Sister Maria as well, to the point where they almost kiss one another. Now, it does seem like the following day, while you do have Joseph working on a tractor, he didn't realize that there's somebody out there trying to spy on him. And so he realized that it's a guy known as Colonel Ramos. And I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly. Now, for the Colonel, it's really more him trying to talk to Sister Maria, but he also kind of realized that Joseph is a mutant. Now, that right there is really important. And here's the reason why. Because when it comes to Colonel, he does work for one of the two government parties in this area. But you do have the guy go out of his way to kidnap some of the children to actually use them as leverage to make Joseph, help out his government party. Now, for Joseph, he has ways to torture you, to get the information out of you, especially when it comes to people that he cares for. And so you do have the Colonel tell Joseph where he can find the children and also Sister Maria as well. But unfortunately, this kind of leads into the downfall for Joseph and his connection to the orphanage. And the reason why, because you do have Joseph go out of his way to find the children, to find Sister Maria. But they're kind of very confused on how in the world he was able to make it to them. And so once they do walk outside, they kind of see what he did. He went on complete rampage, killing off a few soldiers, causing damage everywhere just to get to them. It was a sight to see, a scary sight, especially for the children of the orphanage. And so for Joseph, he kind of realized that he had just destroyed that bond between him and the children of this orphanage. Now, before you have Joseph leave, you do have Sister Maria kind of give him something to carry with him. This magazine. On the cover of the magazine is the X-Men. And she knows that the X-Men are mutants, and she kind of feels like the X-Men might be the best chance to help out Joseph to remember everything from his past. And so that kind of ends issue number 327. But we're not going to stop there. And here's the reason why, because I kind of want to go ahead and cover issue number 328 as well. And here's the reason why, because this kind of begins the whole storyline where it's Charles Xavier kind of realizing that Sabertooth is a lost cause. And let me explain. You see, when it came to Charles Xavier, earlier on in our coverage over the X-Men, the dude truly believed that he could fix the mind of Sabertooth, which for me was pretty wild to think. But he honestly believed that he could do that because he took in characters like Wolverine, Rogue, and also Gambit. And over time, those characters showed like, hey, you know what? They became better people and became true X-Men-like characters. But for Sabertooth, it was a different route because first, for Charles Xavier, he had to fix the mind of Sabertooth to turn him away from being this killer that he truly is. Now, there was a point in time where you had Wolverine stab the mind of Sabertooth. And in that time period for Sabertooth, as his mind was slowly healing up, he was acting like a house pet. And so you had some folks kind of believe in the possibility that he may turn into a good person, but his mind is completely healed up. And so now he's kind of like, no, I'm back to my old ways again. But we're also kind of figuring out the possibility that Sabertooth could have been faking it the entire time when his mind was healing after Wolverine had stabbed him. Now, for Charles Xavier, he's not on his own here, right? Like, Charles Xavier is actually, being watched over by Cyclops, Jean Grey, and also Bishop. Now, for Bishop, he wants to go ahead and kill off Sabertooth, which for me personally, I'm like, dude, go ahead and do it because there's some characters you can't save. And for Sabertooth, he's one of those characters you can't save at all. But the problem is that Charles Xavier tried for so long. Now, it's also Jean Grey telling us when Charles realized that Sabertooth was no longer worth trying to save because they had programmed the Danger Room to give him a peaceful environment. But when they read his mind, when they looked through his eyes, All they saw was just a savage man wanting to kill everything in front of him that was programmed in that danger room session. And so it kind of showed them like, no, this is a man who's no longer worth saving at all. It's time for us to go ahead and hand him over to the government and just move on with our lives. But this is also Sabertooth getting that time to kind of taunt Charles Xavier, because for Charles, he has this crazy dream, well, to most people, that mutants and humans should be able to live together in harmony. And so for Sabertooth, he's kind of like, your dream is literally an illusion. It's never going to happen. And you hate the idea there's mutants like me out there just doing things for the heck of it, ruining the whole idea of what you are trying to achieve. Me and like Magneto. Now for Charles, he does give Magneto a good excuse, because for Magneto, over the years, the man has been going through a lot. But for Magneto, he does truly care for the mutant race, and he is trying his best to help out the mutant race. It's just completely different than what Charles is trying to do. And so for Charles, he said Magneto has an excuse. You don't have one though, Sabertooth. And for Sabertooth, he does not care at all. But either way, for Charles, it's now time to pass him on over to Val Cooper, one of the leaders of X Factor, and hand him over to the government. But this is just another small step of the idea of Onslaught coming our way very soon, because you do have Charles Xavier be confronted by Cyclops and Jean Grey, and all they want to do is just be there for him, because they know this man. This man's kind of like a father to them, and they know right now he hates the idea of failing. But for Charles Xavier, this is a man right now who does not want to talk at all. He's all like, hey, stop. Leave me alone. We all have things to do. Very aggressive, very kind of like short with his two kids or his two students. And for Cyclops and Jean Grey, they kind of realize, yeah, like there's something going on with Charles. But there was one other character that was truly involved with the idea of Sabertooth, and that would be Boom Boom. And let me explain, because over in X-Force Comics, we have saw a few examples of her trying to take care of him, because, well, again, once you had Wolverine stabbed his mind was slowly healing up. He was acting like a house pet. And so for Boom Boom, she felt bad for him. But at the same time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, he'll turn his life around, because she believed in second chances. Now, we also kind of learned that it tied into her father, who she left behind, who was a horrible man, but she kept giving him second chances over and over again. And so when it came to Sabertooth, she was kind of hoping like maybe, just maybe, he'll turn himself around. But it's him telling her like, you are an idiot. Did you really believe in the possibility of me turning good? Like, what is wrong with you? And so it makes her very upset. Now, at first, it's Boom Boom not letting his words get to her. And matter of fact, she's being watched over by Psylocke, who's very impressed at first that Boom Boom is not allowing Sabertooth to get to her. But he continues until that point where she has no choice. She has to attack him to let out her anger. But the problem is that her powers basically sets him free. Now you do have Psylocke being able to jump in. Now the last time these two characters fought, Sabertooth won almost very easily, but for Psylocke, she still believes in the possibility that she might be able to win against him. But it's Sabertooth saying, like, listen, last time you almost lost to me. Really, you did lose to me. But this time, I'm going to show you my full potential as a wild beast, a savage person. And so while you have the two characters fighting against one another, she does begin to lose. But let's not forget, when it came to Sabertooth, he has somebody close to him known as Birdie. Now, Birdie was a psychic who would use her powers as a way to ease his mind, because his mind was just full of things he hated from his past life growing up. And the thing was, he came to Charles originally to have someone like Birdie ease the pain in his mind. But the thing is, with Wolverine stabbing his mind a while ago, he no longer needs a psychic. And so for Psylocke, she's kind of like, oh gosh, my powers are not gonna stop him at all. And he's kind of like, yep, and he does slash her. And so he leaves. But once you do have Archangel, Cyclops, and I want to say Bishop as well. No, Beast. It was Beast. Arrive. They find Boom Boom just holding on to Psylocke as she bleeds out with the possibility of her dying. And this is okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we're going to pick up with X-Men Unlimited issue number 9. Now, with this issue alone, we're going to cover a one-shot story where it's really more Wolverine, Beast, and Psylocke going up against two different characters who I would never imagine working together until this issue right here. Now, guys, remember, when it comes to X-Men Unlimited, it came out once every 3 months. So, while the other series came out 12 times a year, this series only came out 4 times a year, and that is really it. Now, with all that being said, when it came to X-Men Unlimited, it was really more Marvel saying, let's use this series as a way to test out new writers or new artists coming into the company to kind of see what they can do when it comes to our X-Men characters. And so getting into the opening pages of this book, we do pick up with a character known as Pylo, and I really hope I pronounced that name correctly. Now for Pylo, he's just drifting in the middle of the ocean, just trying his best, praying that some boat will come by where he'll be saved. And luckily for him, he was, because he was founded by Lee Forrester crew. Now for Lee Forrester, she was very important in the early days of Chris Claremont's X-Men run, where we were kind of left to believe at first that maybe she'll get with Cyclops, but unfortunately she did not. And then there was that brief moment where we were once again kind of believing that she might get with Cable, but once again, she did not. But either way, for her, she is a captain of her own boat. And so once she finds the man, she kind of realized that there's something wrong with him. The man is truly terrified of something or someone. And matter of fact, he says, hide me right now from Bloodscream. And so 1 week later, you have her call in the X-Men. Now, she only calls in like Wolverine, Psylocke, and Beast here. Now, this story is written by Larry Hama. And for Larry Hama, the dude was the main writer for Wolverine around this time in Marvel Comics. So you already know. This is going to be a Wolverine storyline. And matter of fact, you have Psylocke and Beast get there first. For Wolverine, he kind of hated the idea of traveling on a plane, but also because around this time in Marvel Comics, for Wolverine, he was really more on the savage side of things. And let me explain, just in case you're kind of getting the comics and don't know what I mean. You see, when it came to Fatal Attractions, you have Magneto rip off the adamantium of Wolverine. Later on, we had learned that when it came to Wolverine, when he gained his mutant ability, originally he was supposed to turn into a savage person. But when it came to Weapon X adding on that adamantium, it had stopped the process. Well, thanks to Magneto, that process was once again able to continue. And so for Wolverine, he's kind of on the savage side of things. But either way, you do have Wolverine finally arrive in Florida, meeting up with Psylocke and Beast, and also Lee as well. Now, when they see Wolverine, he is being chased down by a bunch of wild hogs, but you do have Logan being able to kill them all off, and now they have food for the night. But once you have all the characters being able to regroup, you did have Psylocke go visit Pylo, who's still on his ship with Lee Forrester. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she does look into his mind. And when she does see the image of, well, Bloodsport or Blood Scream over and over again. Now guys, the reason why I said Bloodsport and Blood Scream because originally he was Bloodsport, but then later on they changed his name over to Blood Scream. But either way, when it comes to Blood Scream, he's a Wolverine bad guy. You see, for Blood Scream, he is a vampire who's trying his best to reverse the idea of him being a vampire. But the only way to turn back to normal is to find somebody who is immortal and take their blood. And that would be right now Logan. Now, technically, there are other characters out there like that, but for Blood Scream, all he knows is just Wolverine. Now, for Logan, he thought he had officially dealt with Blood Scream, but now he knows he's back in the picture once again. Now, if somebody had told me that this storyline would turn into a storyline where I'm going to see Blood Scream as a pirate, I wouldn't believe you at all. But you do have our crew go on the boat of Lee Forrester and go into the ocean. Now, they do get kind of stuck in the fog, but once they get inside the fog, they're then confronted by Blood Scream. Now, like I said, Blood Scream is technically a pirate right now. And matter of fact, he has an army of people on the boat with him under his control. And so it does lead into this long battle between our heroes and his army. And it's kind of funny because the entire battle, you have Blood Scream just talking like a pirate, but it's also Blood Scream telling us like, hey, listen, Logan, I know in the past I would try my best to hunt you down to get your blood because I need your blood as a way to reverse what happened to me. But it's now Blood Scream kind of like, dude, listen, I'm on a whole different mission right now. Like, going after you is not on my list at all at the moment. And matter of fact, you have Blood Scream use a cannon to shoot Logan off the boat. You have Psylocke then have to go save Wolverine. Now, while all that is happening, another ship appear. And you do have Blood Scream say, you know what? That other ship belongs to me. And both ships just leave our heroes behind. And so now for our heroes, their main goal is to hopefully find Blood Scream because, again, the dude has an army of people under his control. But what is his end goal? Now, things get even crazier, and here's the reason why. Because you do have our heroes take their boat, and they realize that they have entered an area where they are now completely floating in just mid-air. And matter of fact, there is an island also floating as well. And so for our heroes, they're kind of like, yo, where in the world are we at the moment? Now, when they do land on the supposed floating island, you do have Wolverine kind of pick up on a certain smell and recognize it as somebody evil from his past, really from the past of the X-Men. Now, before our heroes are really able to kind of figure out what's going on with this island, you do have Psylocke try to do a side scan across the entire island. But while trying to do that, she is quickly blasted by a mine that was left behind. You see, there are these psychic mines that are placed there just in case somebody who is a psychic try to use their abilities will be hit by one of these mines. Now, you do have our heroes being able to work their way through all the mines and into the temple in the middle of the island. But when they do that, you have Wolverine realize who this island belongs to. And that would be Belasco. Now, for most of the X-Men, they have not dealt with Belasco. And here's the reason why, because he appeared right after you had Chris Claremont take over the X-Men. And so back then it was like Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Cyclops, and I feel like I'm forgetting somebody else. But for Beast and Psylocke, they weren't around at all when it came to Belasco. Now, he was a character who was really connected more to another character we all know and love, better known as Magic. Now, with her no longer being around, we can kind of tell that she's no longer a factor in this storyline. But for Logan, he was in this temple before, but it was a whole lot smaller. But then out of nowhere, you didn't have our heroes be confronted by Belasco. Now, for Belasco, he was the original ruler of Limbo when it came to our coverage over the X-Men. But then, over time, you had Magic become the one to rule Limbo. Now, with all that being said, for Belasco, it's not really him trying to reclaim what he lost, but try to claim something else that he never had before. Now, here's the thing, because you do have Wolverine, Psylocke, and Beast try their best to fight against them. But for Belasco, the dude is magic, so he's really able to handle our guys very easily. And matter of fact, he does plan on using Psylocke as a vessel for something else, while Wolverine and Beast are locked up inside the cage. Now, we also learn here that for Belasco, he is technically working with Bloodscream, but not in the way where Bloodscream kind of believes. And I'll explain that here in a moment. Now, for a brief moment, we do jump back over to Bloodscream, really, because Lee Forrester and Paolo, they had stayed on the boat. And so when they look outside to the ocean, well, they see Bloodscream arriving with 3 boats full of different men who are pirates under his control. Now, these pirates are technically very important for the overall story, and let me explain why. You see, for Belasco, he has this crystal that's really powerful enough on Earth already, but it's more powerful in a different dimension that belongs to a demon known as Keyrock. Now, we had just talked about Keyrock over our coverage in Wolverine, but for Keyrock, he's a very powerful demon with his own dimension. And so for Belasco, what he wants to do is use the crystal and the army of pirates to go into that other dimension and take over all the demons in that dimension, and then bring those demons back over to Earth to take over the Earth. Here comes the problem though. Bloodscream has no idea about this at all, because Belasco had lied to him. Belasco said, hey Bloodscream, we gotta work together. And the reason why, because the world is going to be invaded by a bunch of demons. And so you have Bloodscream going around the world getting all these different people become pirates for him to help defend the Earth from supposed invasion. But in reality, there's no invasion coming onto Earth. The invasion is going into that other reality. Now, this kind of leads into Larry Hama trying to wrap everything up very quickly here. And here's the reason why I'm saying that, because, okay, you do have Belasco open up the gateway that leads into Keyrock's dimension. Now, for Keyrock, he's kind of like, wait a second, who dared to open up a gateway that leads into my dimension? Because that gateway and I were not ready to be, open or be confronted by somebody. But you do have Belasco say, oh, it was me. I'm the one who had opened up the gateway. Now for Belasco, his main goal now is just go in there and take over. Now for Bloodscream, he kind of realized that he has been played. And so now his goal is to also stop Belasco as well. Now, while all of this is happening, you do have our heroes still prisoners thanks to Belasco, but you have Lee on the boat with a sniper, and she sees Belasco with the crystal. And so of course, she does shoot the crystal. Now, when she does that, the gateway kind of turns into a vortex, sucking everything in around it into that other dimension. And so for Bloodscream, he's kind of like, I gotta make sure that Belasco can never do anything like this at all, especially now because without the crystal, he's technically powerless. And so you have Bloodscream grab Belasco, they get sucked into Keyrock's dimension, and the gateway closes. And that's really it for the entire storyline. The day is saved, but unfortunately for Bloodscream, he's now lost in a completely different dimension. But I saw a review done recently on one of the many X-Men books that came out in the last month or whatever. But there was a comment where you had somebody say there's too many X-Men books out there and it's hard to keep track of things. And for me personally, I'm kind of like, do y'all forget about the 1990s where we had all these different X-Men books? X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Excalibur, X-Force, X-Factor, Cable, Wolverine, X-Man. And let's not forget about random special issues like this one right here, Sabertooth in the Red Zone. Now, this is kind of wrapping up the whole plot line that's going on with Sabertooth. And honestly, I like the book, but I kind of feel like this book could have been a issue in Uncanny X-Men or X-Men. But hey, either way, we're still gonna cover it because honestly, it's pretty cool. You see, in the 1990s, when it came to Sabertooth, he was kind of going through this huge plot line in X-Men comics. Let me explain. You see, in the early 1990s, he had his own series, but in that miniseries, we had learned that he always had a psychic nearby him. Now, her name was Birdie, and when it came to Birdie, she would use her powers as a way to ease her mind, or ease his mind. But the problem was that she died, and so he no longer had a psychic nearby to help ease his mind when it came to dealing with his trauma. Now, when it came to Sabertooth, he went over to the school of Charles Xavier to kind of ask for Charles' help. But for Charles, he believed that this was the best opportunity to fix the mind of Sabertooth, which honestly was a bad idea. But after a while, you had the X-Men kind of realize there was no point. There's no way to actually fix the mind of this beast. Now, with all that being said, he was supposed to be handed over to X Factor, but the problem was that you had Boom Boom get very upset with Sabertooth because she believed that there's a possibility that he might turn around and become a good person, but he had tricked her. And so you had Boom Boom use her powers to attack him, but unfortunately it had freed him. And so once he was freed, he said, you know what? I'm going out into the city. And this is where the book picks up at, where you now have the X-Men trying their best to hunt him down. Now, the first person to actually find Sabertooth is Caliban. Now, for Caliban, him and Sabertooth have a long history with one another. But also, let's not forget, when it comes to Caliban, he is a mutant that has the ability to track down other mutants. Now, for Caliban, he has a huge amount of hatred towards Sabertooth. And here's the reason why. Because back in the Mutant Massacre, you had Sabertooth be part of a team known as the Marauders. And when it came to the Marauders, they went into the tunnels of the Morlocks and had killed off most of the Morlocks back then. And Caliban, he was a Morlock. And so, unfortunately, he had to watch the death of so many of his friends by the hands of the Marauders, including Sabertooth. And so, ever since then, the dude always wants to get paid back against him. And so, Caliban was the first person to find Sabertooth. But the problem is that Sabertooth was able to easily take down Caliban. But that's the problem right there, because for the X-Men, they were using Caliban as a way to track down Sabertooth. But this kind of leads us into learning who's out there right now for the X-Men trying to track down Sabertooth. So we got Cyclops, Iceman, Archangel, and Jean Grey. Now for me personally, I'm kind of like, where is the rest of X-Force? Because by this point in Marvel Comics, X-Force and the X-Men were both living together in the same building. X-Force should have been there to help out the X-Men to deal with this problem. But hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and move on. Now, you also have Charles Xavier trying to also help out with this situation from the X-Mansion to locate Sabertooth. But the problem is that Sabertooth now has the ability to block out psychics. And apparently it's all because of Wolverine. Because when Wolverine had stabbed Sabertooth in the head, he did damage the mind of Sabertooth. But his mind was able to heal up to the point where now he's able to block Jean Grey and Charles from finding him. Now for Charles, he does get called up by Val Cooper because Charles was supposed to hand him over to Val Cooper and the American government. And so you have Charles kind of show us that there's something going on with his character, because to him, tonight will be the night where Sabertooth will no longer be around. Now for Cyclops and Iceman, they do head over to one of the many apartments that Sabertooth had used over the years as a safe house. And so once they do arrive at his one apartment, you do have our heroes realize that he was there recently, but apparently he had been looking up different kind of travel plans by train, by bus, or even by, plane. And so you have our heroes kind of wondering where in the world is he going? Now, they don't realize that yes,
he did just leave, but he's coming right back. And so while you have Cyclops and Iceman inside his apartment, Sabertooth reappears and begins to attack our heroes. Now you do have Iceman being able at the very last second to save Cyclops' life by the hands of Sabertooth, but you do have our boy Victor being able to escape. But again, where is he trying to go to? Now you do have Iceman try to follow Sabertooth, but the problem is that you do have Victor being able to get a hostage. Now with this hostage, Iceman really can't do anything at all. And matter of fact, you have Sabertooth begin to give Iceman orders like, hey listen, I'm gonna walk away. I'm going down the subway and you will go ahead and use your ice ability to block off the path to the entrance. And you will not follow me because if you do, I will kill off this guy. And so unfortunately for Iceman, he has no choice. Now, he does ice up the entrance, but here's the catch because let's not forget, there's also Beast. And so once you have Victor being able to get on the train, he's then confronted by Beast. Now, technically for Beast, he should be able to kind of hold his own against Sabertooth long enough to allow the rest of the team to catch up. But here's the thing, because for Beast, he also wants to know, like, what is Sabertooth's end goal here? Now, for Sabertooth, we kind of get the idea that, yes, he wants to travel, but also he wants to kind of hurt the image of the X-Men, because what the X-Men stand for, the whole idea of mutants and humans trying to live together in harmony, that mutants who are bad can slowly be turned into good people like Wolverine, Gambit, and also Rogue. But either way, you do have Sabertooth being able to get away from Beast as soon as Jean Grey and Cyclops and Iceman are able to catch up to kind of help out. Now, the last person who could possibly slow down Sabertooth would most likely be Archangel. But here's the thing about Archangel though, because he's very upset with Sabertooth, because in our last X-Men video, Psylocke got badly injured by him. And so we were kind of left to believe that she had possibly died by the hands of Sabertooth. And matter of fact, the next X-Men video we do should kind of figure out what's going to happen to Psylocke after her injury done by Sabertooth. But for Archangel, we also have to remember that he was changed by Apocalypse. And so it's him saying like, listen, I am not really scared with the idea of killing you off. But for Sabertooth, he knows that Archangel will not do it. He does not have the guts to actually kill off somebody. And so because of that, you have Sabertooth being able to take the advantage over Archangel and begins to rip apart his wings. And you have the two characters crash into a nearby water tower. Now for Val Cooper and also the government, they have sent in a team of soldiers to kind of basically go after Sabertooth to hopefully bring him down. Now Trish Tilby, she is reporting what's happening in the city, and she's also kind of expressing her concern right now. If the X-Men are not really able to stop Sabertooth, then who can? Now Val Cooper told Charles Xavier earlier that she has the Avengers on the sideline ready to help out with this situation. Now don't worry, we're not going to see them at all. But it's the whole idea of how dangerous this man is. But you do have our heroes kind of sit down and try to figure out like, okay, where is he going? And so they're trying to figure out what is his end goal, right? And then kind of realize that he wants to spit on the image of what the X-Men stand for, but to also make Charles Xavier pay back for everything he did to him. Because for Sabertooth, he hated the idea of being locked away, but also he hates the idea that there are other people out there being able to have a chance to at least grow up with the idea of being a mutant, but still have the possibility of a normal life. And so once you have our heroes kind of sit down and realize where he's going, they're kind of like, oh my God, he's going after Jubilee. He's going after Generation X, because that is the best way to get back at Charles Xavier. He locked away Sabertooth, tried to make Sabertooth pay for the crimes that he had committed, but also try to change the man as well. And for Victor, that was not okay at all. So how can I hurt you? Oh, I know. I'll go after your brand new team, these young mutants, but also Jubilee and her connection to Wolverine. Now, the rest of this issue is really going to be more of the idea of watching the X-Men fighting against Sabertooth, but at the same time trying to convince him to just stop. Like, don't do this, because technically he's going to lose. He is completely surrounded. You have the X-Men, you have the government forces there alongside with Val Cooper. But for Sabertooth, he's trying to make a point here that what the X-Men stand for is completely stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all to him. The whole idea of mutants and humans trying to live together in harmony. Oh, we can turn bad mutants into good mutants. It just won't work for him. That what he is what he is. That technically what he stands for is the failure of the X-Men. You were able to fix Gambit. You were able to fix Wolverine and Rogue, but you can't fix me. Now, there is a point where you do have Cyclops knock him out to allow the soldiers to take him away. But then you have Victor grab one of the guns to force the soldier to shoot him. And so in his last dying breath, he grabs the symbol of the X-Men that fell off most likely Cyclops' outfit and holds it up in the air to kind of show once again that he is spitting on the image of the X-Men. And we're kind of left to believe that he is now officially dead. But okay, so in the year 1996, when it came to Marvel, they kind of gave Archangel his own special book, kind of like Sabertooth, who had In the Red Zone, that special one single issue storyline. And so for Archangel, it's kind of like a sequel for Sabertooth in the Red Zone, but also what has been happening over in X-Men comics. And let me explain. You see, when it came to Archangel and also Psylocke, they were both severely injured by Sabertooth. Now, really, Psylocke was more injured than Archangel was, because for Archangel, his wings got badly injured, but he was still kind of able to move around. But for Psylocke, she was on the verge of death. Now, we already cut the storylines where it's now Archangel and Psylocke just trying to move on from those moments. But that's the problem right there for Archangel. He really can't move on from the idea that his wings were badly injured by Sabertooth. Now, before we kind of dive into this storyline, I kind of want to go back over Angel's past for a brief moment. And the reason why, because this man is technically dealing with trauma. Because as we all know, in the early days of X Factor comics, when it came to the Marauders, they attacked Archangel in the middle of the Mutant Massacre, which then led to his wings being removed thanks to some other things happening behind the scenes. But then when it came to Apocalypse, it was him who gave him his metal wings. But for Archangel, the scars are still there physically and mentally, with the idea that he lost his original wings that he was born with. And so when it came to Sabertooth just tearing apart his metal wings, it was kind of like Archangel going back in time and reliving what happened to him back in the Mutant Massacre. And so as we get into the opening pages of this storyline, real quick guys, everything was done in black and white in this issue. But as we get into the opening pages, it's Psylocke and Archangel just trying to have dinner with one another. Because by this point in Marvel Comics, they were a couple. And it's two of them trying to move on. But for Psylocke, she kind of realized that Archangel is not really able to move on. And so she's kind of wondering what Sabertooth said to him as she had Sabertooth damage his metal wings. But the problem is Archangel is not really trying to open up to her. And that right there is going to be the main factor of this entire storyline. That Archangel is not really allowing people into his life, especially when it comes to a woman who truly does care for him. And so when she tries to attack him, yes, it is wrong, but it's really more her saying like, open up to me. I'm trying to understand what's going on in your mind. But for Archangel, enough is enough. He gets upset and he flies away. Now for Psylocke, she does realize that her tactic to kind of get him to open up was completely wrong. But at the same time though, she was just trying to help him. But the problem is, while you have Archangel trying to fly away, well, that is when he's attacked out of nowhere and he begins to fall straight towards the ground. Or well, at first it does look like he'll head for the ground, but then out of nowhere he gets caught in some kind of net. Now, when he looks up, he realizes that there are all these different birds just flying around him. He does see somebody standing there and asking them to help him get free, but that person is not really trying to free him. Now, this person is going to begin the whole process of what could be the end of Archangel and also Psylocke. Now, for Psylocke, she does call in Jean Grey as well. Now, for Jean Grey, this kind of makes sense because Jean Grey is more powerful than Psylocke. And the problem is, though, when you have Jean Grey trying to locate the mind of Archangel, well, just like that, she's repelled back by some kind of psychic barrier. So she's unable to find the man. Now, for Psylocke, she does inform Jean Grey, like, there's something mentally going on with Archangel. And I kind of get what she means because she realize that there's something mentally wrong and she wants to know what exactly happened that night when it came to Sabertooth. But while you do have the two ladies talking to one another, a bird almost crashes into them. And so it's kind of the first hint that, okay, this storyline is based around birds and not really just because of Archangel, because the other character who's with him. And so then we're kind of able to transition back over to Archangel. Now, when we do, we see that he's still chained up, but the problem is that this person who has him won't let him go, but she still feeds him. Now, the reason why I say she, because later on we do find out that this is a female. Now, we don't learn her name in the early parts of the storyline, but once she does reveal that she is a woman, well, for Archangel, he's kind of like, dang, she's kind of cute. You know, he's lover boy. He finds a lot of women attractive. The first one was Jean Grey. But either way, he's kind of wondering, like, where is he? Now, she does not tell him where because honestly, she does not know. All she knows is that they're somewhere in America. But also, she's kind of hoping that with him having wings, he has some way to communicate with the birds, to make the birds go away. That for some strange reason, these birds are always just attacking her over and over again. That she's been trapped here, and so lately, she has been setting up these defenses around this place to protect her from the birds. Now, while you have Archangel resting, well, he realized that this mysterious woman is beginning to take care of his wings. Now, here's the thing, because to her, his wings are beautiful. They're amazing, and she wants to help him out. Now, let's not forget that for Archangel, he hates his rings because his old ones were more beautiful. These came from Apocalypse, and that man is an evil man. But the thing is, to her, she's still like, these are amazing. Now, she has no idea that he is awake and he was watching her. But the next following day, while you have the two characters talk to one another, we do learn here that she had a husband, but something happened to that husband. And that is our second clue right there. The birds, the husband. But while you have the two talking, for Archangel, he realized that she's playing this tough game, you know, like, hey, if you try this, I'll kill you. If you do this, I'll hurt you. But for Archangel, he kind of realized she's not that kind of person. She's just somebody who's going through something, somebody who's hurt, but also trapped in this area. It's him wanting to help her. Now, for Jean Grey and also Psylocke, they're still trying their best to find Archangel, but something kind of reaches out to Psylocke, like, airplane. Why is airplane so important? Like, that right there gives them a clue, but also us as the readers as well. But as we transition back over to Archangel and also now this woman, we do learn that her name is Tuesday. Now, this begins what I say, like, why Psylocke and Archangel had some issues, because while you have the two characters talking to one another, you do have her trying to open up to Archangel, but she's kind of scared to open up to him. Now, she has a good reason why, because of her past, but the thing is, she says, I can't really remember after the accident, but I do know one thing. The birds are always attacking me. I've been stuck here. Now, while you do have her trying to, again, fix his wings, touch his wings, and make him fall more in love with his wings, you have Archangel kind of realize that she's now touching him in ways where he's now wanting to open up to her. And so that bond is being built. Psylocke has never truly been able to get close to Archangel. And so you have him now sharing his origin story to her. Now, she does not tell us her story just yet. And the reason why? Because the alarms go off. Because the birds are once again attacking. Now, she does not let Archangel go to allow him the ability to help her out with the birds. Now, I kind of like this because for Archangel, the entire time, he had the ability to break free, but he had to believe in himself, believe in his wings are strong enough to help him break free. And so while she's out there struggling with the birds, you didn't have Archangel say, it's now time for me to get up, to finally help her out. And so he walks out there and he says, I'm here, and literally take care of all the birds that was around the area. But now it's his turn to take care of Tuesday. But while you have those two characters talking, you have Jean Grey and also Psylocke kind of doing research. Now, while you have both things happening at the same time, we learn the origin of Tuesday. And honestly, I kind of feel like Marvel could explore this character more if they had somebody to sit down and try this. But when it came to Tuesday, she was married to a huge stock man. Like the dude had stocks in all these different companies. A very powerful man, but he was always beating her. And so one day while they were flying, while he was piloting the plane, she attacked him because her goal was to kill him, but also kind of die with him as well, but to also finally be free. But as the plane was going to go down, all of these different birds began to just crash into the plane, dying as they went down. And so for Tuesday, she believes the reason why the birds are attacking because they want revenge for what she had did to them when she had killed her husband. Now, with all that being said, you have Archangel saying, don't worry, I'm here. I'm going to guide you out of this area. But that's the problem though, because when you have Archangel just wrap his wings or one of his wings around her to fly her out of the area because he believes that he can protect her, he realized that she's gone, that technically she was never there. And you see, this is where things get kind of wild because you have Jean Grey and Psylocke tell us that once that plane had crashed, there was no survivors at all. And so we're kind of left to wonder, then what actually happened in this book? Because for Archangel, he also realized that he never left the city, that technically he was still inside the same town that he was in at the very beginning of this book. So where did he go to? How in the world did Tuesday reach out to him like that? And so you have Archangel tell Psylocke everything that went down between him and also this Tuesday ghost. But that hurts Psylocke's feelings because you're now telling the woman you love that another woman touched you and was able to have you open up and get close to you better than she ever was able to. And the book ends. Okay, so it's time for us to kind of dive into X-Men Unlimited issue number 10. Now, this issue for me is very special. And the reason why, because, well, we're getting into the first meeting between Dark Beast and Beast. Hank McCoy meets Hank McCoy. And honestly, the ending of this book, I was kind of surprised by this. I didn't think they'll end the book that way, but hey, you know what? It makes it more interesting for later stories down the road. Now, the opening pages of this storyline I kind of like because it gives us a good example of the younger days of Hank McCoy, our Hank McCoy, from the main Marvel universe. Now, when it came to Hank, we already know the dude loves science. The dude loves trying to figure out different things that have been put in front of him. And so we see his parents being called up to the school, right? And the parents are kind of like, hey, what's going on? They're like, your son has gone too far this time. And so you have the principal take the parents appearance outside to show what Hank has been doing. This man broke apart the entire engine of the school bus, and I guess the janitor is very upset by it. Like, dude, put everything back where it goes. But for Hank, while doing this, it's him discovering how everything works. And so it's kind of like, yes, this is a boy of science. This is a boy who's going to love science for his entire life. But as we transition over to the present day, we see the principal being killed off in his nursing home, because the entire time telling that story, he's telling that story over to who he believes is the main Marvel Universe Hank McCoy. But in reality, he's telling this story to the Dark Beast, the other Hank McCoy from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Now, as you have the principal die, this is kind of like the perfect time to re-explain like who Dark Beast is. So when it comes to Dark Beast, he's from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. Now, in that timeline, you have that timeline technically end at this point in time in Marvel Comics, but 4 characters were able to come over to this reality, the main Marvel Universe, before the other one was completely wrecked. You had Dark Beast, Sugar Man, X-Man, and also Holocaust. Now, Dark Beast and Sugar Man, they arrived 20 years in the past. So for 20 years, they've been hiding behind the scenes, making their own types of moves. Now, when it came to Dark Beast, he never really thought about trying to find his main Marvel Universe counterpart. He just stayed behind the scenes until when he was trying to kill off Bishop, he saw his counterpart. And he was kind of like, I need to learn everything about my counterpart here in this reality. Now, as we transition over to our Hank McCoy, we see our Hank McCoy right now trying to hopefully discover the cure for the legacy virus, because in one of our earlier storylines, he feels like getting very close into actually cracking it. Now, here's the thing, because the legacy virus has been around for a very long time in our coverage, but just in case anybody is joining, the legacy virus is just a virus out there killing off mutants left and right. Now, it also has evolved and now attacking the human race as well, but there's only one human case at the moment, and that would be Moira Taggart. But for Beast, our Hank McCoy, he has been trying his best to find a cure for the legacy virus for a very long period of time, to the point where you now have Charles Xavier getting very worried for Hank McCoy. And so you have Charles ask Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, like, hey, he's your best friend. Right now, what he needs is a best friend to kind of pull him out of the lab, because that man needs a break. That man needs to get outside and come back to reality. Now, as we switch back over to Dark Beast, it's Dark Beast kind of realizing that our Hank McCoy is getting very close in discovering something very important, of course, the legacy virus. But for Dark Beast, he feels like Hank's not ready just yet for what he has planned down the road. But also for Dark Beast, he still wants to learn more about Hank. And so how can you do that? Well, you go around, begin to ask different people who was close in Hank's life in the past, but also pretend to be like Hank, so that you're able to collect more information about him. And so for Dark Beast, he does that. He finds the what seems to be old girlfriend to Hank McCoy back in high school to kind of get a better idea of his character. But you also have Dark Beast go out of his way to kill her off by releasing some kind of deadly virus that affects every single person in that area. It is truly messed up, because at first when she arrived, she was so happy to see him. And then unfortunately, she dies, and a few other folks in that shop also dies as well. It's truly messed up. Now, as we transition back over to Hank McCoy and also Bobby Drake, it's Bobby trying to get Hank out of the lab. Like, at first, it's him helping out with the experiment that Hank has going on, but the problem is that the experiment does not go well. It almost hurt Bobby. Now, after the incident, it's Bobby trying to tell Hank, like, listen, the entire team understands what you're trying to do. We all agree that finding the cure for the legacy virus is really important. But at the same time, though, you still need a break. You still need to leave your lab to enjoy the outside world. And so you have Bobby just trying his best to get Beast out of the lab. And at first, he believes that Beast is going to leave the lab. He's like, you know what? You're right, Bobby. Let's go ahead and leave and let's play some Scrabble. The problem is that as soon as Bobby walks outside the lab door, you have Hank grab the door and lock it. So now Bobby cannot get back in, which honestly he can because he has ice powers. Just freeze the door and break it down and go right back in there. But hey, whatever. So now we see Dark Beast continuing to try to learn more about Hank McCoy of this reality. And so you have Dark Beast go pay a visit over to a priest of a church. Now, can I say this is truly messed up? Like, everything Dark Beast has done so far is truly messed up, but like once you have Dark Beast being able to learn a tad bit more about Hank McCoy, you have Dark Beast just blow up the church. I'm kind of like, dude, you don't have to kill every single person from Hank McCoy's past. Like, let some folks live, which honestly he will, but there is a special reason why the next two people get the chance to survive. And what we're seeing right now is that it's Dark Beast trying to alter his form, because for Dark Beast, he's gray. He has longer hair. He looks completely different from our Beast. And so what his goal is right now is to just change his form completely to look just like our Hank McCoy. And personally, we already know what he's trying to do. He's trying to replace our Hank McCoy when it comes to the X-Men for a very special reason. Now, you do have Dark Beast pay a visit over to the parents to our Hank McCoy. Now, here's the thing, because he's also kind of learning the origin to our Hank McCoy. And the thing is, our Hank McCoy's origin is a tad bit different from the other X-Men characters when it comes to their mutation. And let me explain. You see, when it came to our Hank McCoy's father, he was hit with a huge amount of radiation. Now, with this huge amount of radiation, it altered his genes. So years later, when it came to our Hank McCoy being born, well, he came out as a mutant. Now, Dark Beast is learning this origin, and Dark Beast does not kill off the parents to our Hank. And the reason why? Because these parents remind him of his own parents, and these people still have a part in his life, a part in his heart. And so you say, you know what? I'm going to let them live and just leave. Now, as he does leave, he does kill somebody else off in the nearby area. Now, as we transition back over to our Beast, you have our Beast still continuing to work on his, cure for the legacy virus. But then out of nowhere, you have Dark Beast being able to hack into the computers to our Beast. And when he does, he leaves a message behind for Beast to follow. And so this kind of leads into our Beast meeting Dark Beast for the first time. Now, when you do have our Beast meet Dark Beast for the first time, it's Dark Beast trying to tell our Beast that his goal is to replace him on the X-Men, to get close to the other X-Men people, but especially Bishop. And here's the reason why he wants to get close to Bishop: to kill him off. Let me explain. And so this kind of leads into the ending of this storyline, where we're now picking up with our Beast being confronted by Dark Beast at this abandoned building. Now, for Dark Beast, his main goal is to replace our Beast on the X-Men. And here's the reason why. You see, really, there's two reasons why. The first is going to be Bishop. And let me explain. You see, when it came to Legion Quest, as we all know, you had Legion kill off Charles Xavier. With the death of Charles Xavier, it had created a brand new timeline, better known as Age of Apocalypse. Now, most of the X-Men we all know and love, they all had disappeared. They were replaced with counterparts of themselves in this brand new timeline. But for Bishop, that was not the case. You see, for Bishop, he was able to live a life in that brand new timeline, 20 years in that brand new timeline. Now, when it came to Bishop and the X-Men, when they were able to bring back the old timeline, Bishop was still able to remember a few things from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. And so for Dark Beast, he hates the idea of Bishop knowing about that reality, because it ties into the second reason. And that would be Mr. Sinister. And here's the reason why. Because in the Age of Apocalypse timeline, Mr. Sinister played a major role in that storyline in Age of Apocalypse. But in this reality, if our Mr. Sinister discovers that Bishop has these memories of an alternate timeline of things being done in that timeline done by his counterpart, then that Sinister, our Sinister, will then be able to kind of use Bishop to begin new kinds of experiments. And so for Dark Beast and Sugarman, they want to make sure that our Sinister does not discover Bishop knowing things from an alternate timeline. And so that's why his goal is to hide with the X-Men, kill off Bishop, but to also make sure that Sinister cannot get his hands on Bishop. But the story really does end on the note where you have Beast wake up. When he wakes up, he realizes that he's being walled in behind this brick wall. And basically, it's Dark Beast getting what he wants, being able to replace our Beast on the X-Men, begin his job of possibly killing off Bishop. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.